Blackhawks fans, and welcome to a brand new edition of the Four Feathers podcast. As always, we appreciate every single one of you joining us. Happy holidays to everybody. Hope everybody had a great Christmas. If everybody is still celebrating holidays, obviously Hanukkah is still in celebration. If you are celebrating, we wish you the happiest of holidays there. I am Ron Luce, joined by the big boss man himself, Mr. Tony Marchese. Tone. First off, good to see you, my friend. It's been a couple days. We might talk daily, but it's good to see you actually face to face here, my friend. First off, how you doing? Before we get into anything Blackhawks hockey,
hey, we're hanging in there, man. The Christmas is over. I know we talk daily, as you said, but it is good to see you. I'll be seeing you pretty much the rest of the day. We'll be down at the UC tonight. Should be a good time down there. But I'm hanging in there, Ron. I'm doing well. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well as well. I can't complain. I am excited for this week of Blackhawks hockey, and we're going to talk about that a little bit at the end of the show. But we have plenty to discuss. It's been a couple of weeks for us here at the Four Feathers podcast. About 7 games now for the Blackhawks since our last show. So apologies to everybody. The holidays got in the way, and as most people know here at On Tap, I am also on Bears as well as Cubs, and we had a couple of shows there too. So, playing a little bit of damage control all over the place during the holiday season. But we are back. This is a great show for those tuning in for you live. If you're listening to us on a podcast version, hopefully you're listening to us on the way to the United Center. Maybe it's tonight. Maybe it's on Tuesday when you're heading to Wrigley Field for the Winter Classic, or maybe even if it's next Friday when the Blackhawks play once again at the United Center. That'll be against the Montreal Canadiens. And Tona, I don't know about you, but I got tickets to that one too. I fully plan on being in attendance. 3 games of Blackhawks hockey this week in person. It's going to be a lot of fun. But before we can talk about the future, we do have to talk about what has happened in the past. And let's start there, Tone. The Blackhawks over these last 7 games, not horrendous if you look at it over the full span of 7 games. 3-4 in their last 7. They had a 3-game win streak in there, specifically dating back to those games against the Islanders, the Capitals, and then the Kraken. Unfortunately, though, that game against the Calgary Flames just didn't go their way. That one felt like, Tone, and I want to get your opinion. Maybe this is a good place to start. But lost 2 since that Calgary one as well. So now a 3-game skid coming into Sunday's game against the Dallas Stars. That Calgary game, Tony, would you put that one on the list of games they'll want back? For games they'll want back tracker for the season? Or do you think that was just a good old-fashioned beatdown by Calgary?
The late rally that took place in that game, obviously Bertuzzi's got 2 goals in there as well. You sort of felt the momentum coming back. I don't really know if I'm putting that one on my games they'll want back tracker. Maybe not even as much as a game like the 4-3 loss to the Minnesota Wild. As much as the Calgary Flames game. But Seth Jones returns to the lineup, Ron, in that one. I don't know. Maybe it's just the people out there. Maybe I'm going to ruffle Ron's feathers right here. Was Seth Jones returning to the lineup the problem there?
I don't know.
It was just a little bit of an adjustment getting him back into the lineup for things that were working. We were on a 3-game win streak heading into that game. Yes, you had your late rally in there. Bertuzzi scores 2. It was a fun game to watch. Definitely. Was Seth Jones, coming back, shaking off the rust a little bit? Because could that have been a little bit of an adjustment problem? The record's not good since Seth Jones came back, Ron. I know we're starting it out hot right now, but it's my question for you.
I think it's a fair question, and I think there's something that a lot of people are forgetting. Seth Jones was hurt when Luke Richardson was canned. So he is adjusting to the Anders Sorensen system now as well as all these other players. And you could argue that a lot of these other guys had a little bit maybe more experience given the quality of hockey that we saw during that 3-game winning streak. I think there's a little bit of adjustment period here for Seth Jones. Now, granted, also the blue line is in a little bit of shambles. The pairings for Sunday night's game as of today appear to be TJ Brody paired with Seth Jones on the top pairing. Luis Crevier will jump in on the second pairing. I believe he is paired with – who am I missing? Who is my brain not telling me is in the lineup? Vlasic, sorry. Woo. It's been a long holiday season here, Tone. And then it'll be
Shake the rust off. Shake the rust off, Rob.
Taking the rust off too.
Just like Seth Jones.
The Allen and Murphy pairing will be the third pairing. So no Kevin Korchinski. That was obviously the big news that just came out today, actually, as we record, is that Kevin Korchinski is going back to Rockford. He had a 9-game stint with the Blackhawks. Looked good. Didn't tally any points in the stretch, but did look good in most of those games. Tony, I know you and I have talked about that quite a bit over those 9 games, about seeing just the kind of the growth in his game and his positioning and things like that, which is exactly what I think the Blackhawks wanted to see. I think this is what fans wanted to see. Now we're getting to see that a little bit here. He'll go back to Rockford, keep playing his 25 minutes a night as the top pair guy there, which will be good for continuing for his development. Wyatt Kaiser comes back up, but will not draw in for the Sunday game against the Dallas Stars. Maybe we see Wyatt Kaiser on Tuesday against the St. Louis Blues in the Winter Classic. Tone, I think, obviously we're not going to go game by game here. There's a lot to cover, but there's a lot of big things that we can cover here. And I want to talk a little bit to start about maybe some of the bad. Like, let's just get the bad out of the way now, and then it can only go up from here for the rest of the show. There have been a lot of games in this stretch where it feels like they just have lost focus. The Devils game to start this stretch was, I think, the most glaring example of that, leading and then falling eventually with 4 unanswered goals from the Devils in that one. But then we kind of saw it maybe a little bit in the Flames game, maybe a little bit in the Wild game, and then they just did not show up against the Buffalo Sabres in this most recent game. It feels like there was a little bit of a lack of focus there. And now, granted, another negative problem, and we'll just loop them all into one here, has been Peter Mrazek's play since returning from the injured reserve. Now, I don't know if that's he's still hurt and he's just been telling everybody that he can play, or maybe he's re-aggravated something. We will see Arvid Soderblom on Sunday, so there will not be a Peter Mrazek experiment at the United Center on Sunday night. But Tony, I mean, between the lackluster goaltending from Peter Mrazek, really mostly in those last 2 games, the Wild game and then the Sabres game where he was pulled ultimately after giving up 4 goals, that and a lack of focus, I think, has kept this 7-game stretch from being maybe a 5-2 stretch instead of a 3-4 stretch, Tom.
You're absolutely right here. And, the lack of focus thing, I'm going to take this into 2 different directions. The lack of focus thing, we saw that under Luke Richardson. We saw that all year. Now, you'd think that, maybe a coaching adjustment would sort of shake that up a little bit. And, that's sort of what some teams refer to as the new coach bump. You got to be on alert. There's a new voice in the room, in there and directing things around. Looks like the exact same problems. To me, that's a roster issue. It's not a coaching issue. It's a roster issue. It's bled over into this new regime. That's a problem, and it's concerning. In fact, to me, that's more of an indictment on a guy like Nick Foligno and Seth Jones and, your veterans out there than it is the coaching staff. It's not to say that they're not trying, but there's something is left to be desired when these guys are I don't know, doing game prep. Now, it took until I think the second period for them to mention this, and I didn't see it against the Buffalo Sabres, but they had apparently flown out at like 6 a.m. that morning out to Buffalo after the holiday. Like, they didn't use the off day there. I don't know if there was an NHL regulations that they couldn't fly or do any travel until Friday morning, but that seemed like a poor decision to me. I don't know what was going on there, but it took them a little bit to wake up. It was interesting in that game. The first goal that was scored, I believe it was Bertuzzi, came like at 7:31 local time Chicago, which is when the Hawks are used to starting playing games. So I don't know if it's just adjustments, the scheduling, the travel that's throwing these guys off a little bit. I mean, we've got to take that into consideration. Obviously, they're professional athletes, but you do have a significant cast of characters who are younger guys on this team as well, too, Ron,
Sure.
who aren't used to that grind as much. That said, there's a roster issue when it comes to the focus through a full 60. That's been identified. I hope that it's rectified through some moves at the trade deadline, potentially. or over this upcoming offseason. The goaltending side of the house. I didn't think there was going to be a day this season where I was on these airwaves with you, Ron, and I said, Arvid Soderblom's the guy I want in net tonight. That was never even in the realm of possibility. I mean, obviously there was a chance. There was a little bit of a chance, not a big chance, but a little bit of a chance that he was going to come in and do what he's done this season. But he's looked night and day better than what he did last season. And Peter Mrazek looks like the Peter Mrazek when he first got here to Chicago, battling injuries and just not completely himself. We know what a healthy Peter Mrazek looks like. It's a slightly average, maybe slightly above average at times NHL goaltender. Injured Peter Mrazek is the guy that you and Johnny labeled the perfect tank tendy. And you got the perfect tank tendy in net right now. And every time he steps out there on the ice. So I don't exactly know where this is going to go. I know Brossoit still is a little bit away from a return to action. Drew Commesso has been sent back down. If Mrazek's still hurt, I don't know. I see people asking me this, Ron, on the timeline a bunch. Why not trade Peter Mrazek? Who wants this version of Peter Mrazek? I don't think anybody does.
I think that's a fair question. I don't want
this version of Peter Mrazek. So you're as of right now, they're playing themselves into a position where the only goaltender that you can even move at this deadline, if you wanted to, is Arvid Soderblom. And that's a little bit of a problem compared to what we had maybe towards the beginning of the season. So watching the ebbs and flows of this is going to be important, Ron.
Definitely. And I think that this show, Tony, I think that we're doing here today, I think it's appropriately episode 13, right? Everybody claims 13 is not a lucky number. Ironically, 13 is my lucky number. But we are effectively more or less halfway through the season, right? I mean, we're going to get into the dog days of January and February here in very short order. The Hawks play a lot of home hockey in the months of January and February, which I think is a very key thing to keep in mind here, like you had mentioned with some of the travel and things like that, especially with a young hockey club. Hell, Sunday's game is the start of 5 straight home games. I know, obviously, the Winter Classic's a neutral site, but they're still in Chicago. So it's 5 straight home games for the Blackhawks here, all the way until January 8th. This is the time where now they're going to start to have to figure this shit out. Because I was asked a question by a listener of ours. I gotten to know him a little bit through the days of covering the Chicago Wolves. His name's John Witkowski, and he asked me the question on X the one day, and he said, what do they do with Brossoit? And this was before Mrazek was hurt and everything like that. He said, because overall, Mrazek has played well this season, maybe not great, but he's played fine. Soderblom has played phenomenally, but now Soderblom has to clear waivers to go to Rockford. So it's not just as simple as, well, just go let him season a little more with Drew Commesso and Rockford and roll the veterans out and be done with it. It's not that simple now, because now Soderblom is arguably looking like a goaltender potentially of the future for the Chicago Blackhawks as a young tendy here in the city.
And let's not say that that's all written in stone here either. Oh, absolutely. I mean, it could go sideways tonight. You never know.
It could. It absolutely could, especially against a team like the Dallas Stars. But I think it really is it's going to be interesting to see how they address this. And we'll learn this in the next 2 weeks, because Brossoit should be back around mid-January. We'll call it like Martin Luther King Day, roughly, is where we should see Brossoit skating. He can be back by X game, blah, blah, blah. Because it was about 6 weeks was the timeline from when he had the surgery, which was right after Thanksgiving, American Thanksgiving, that is. So already kind of going to get some rumblings probably of what is going to happen with Laurent Brossoit. Because I think, Tone, arguably, if Peter Mrazek is truly injured still, and he was like, hey, I'm good enough to play, but I'm not 100%, I think as soon as Brossoit comes back, Peter Mrazek goes right back to the injured list, and they let Brossoit split time with Soderblom and just see what happens. But, Tone, I agree with you. I did not expect us to be sitting here talking about Arvid Soderblom being the better of the 2 goaltenders this season, especially after what we saw last year in, albeit limited action, as the Blackhawks' backup goaltender.
I'm starting him in the Winter Classic. I don't know about you.
I would as well.
That's who, and that was not the name that I thought was going to start that game. But I will be mad. I will be mad if Peter Mrazek is in net for that game. I don't know about you, man. That's just how I feel right now.
No, I think that's fair. And I think that further adds into what you said, Tone, right? There is a roster deficiency here. They are playing through a coaching change. They are trying to figure out a lot of shit right now. A lot of young players, kind of a crazy all over the place schedule. They're, especially in this first half. I feel like the Hawks have had one of the weirdest schedules in recent memory. 2 West Coast trips already. I mean, that's very rare, I think, for the Hawks at this point, usually in a season. Now, again, you start to settle in. What's going to change? You got a big game tonight, granted, against a Dallas Stars team that you beat right before Thanksgiving in electric fashion at home. Maybe, just maybe, the Hawks can rekindle some of that home cooking here on Sunday and take that into the Winter Classic. But, Tony, I agree with you. I think that's just been kind of, to me, what has stood out in this 7-game stretch recently, and the reason that I think that they're 3-4. But that being said, there has been good that we absolutely have to discuss here. Teuvo Teravainen has been phenomenal. A 4-point stretch with 10 points, or pardon me, 4-game stretch with 10 points. 10 points. Mostly assists, that's Teuvo's game. He's a passer. 1 goal, 9 assists in 4 games. He's 2 games scoreless since. But overall, I had a really good 4-game stretch there that was coinciding with that 3-game win streak as well. Ilya Mikheyev has gotten hot. He has scored 5 goals in his last 6 games, with, again, 5 of those really coming in that hot 4-game stretch from Teuvo as well, because they've been playing largely on the same line together. It's been really good to see. There is a comment, so we'll return to the Mrazek note here. Stole it breezing, good friend of ours and listener here says, Mrazek is still hurt. Soder has to get all the reps until it's a back-to-back. I would agree with that. I think that's a fair assessment of the situation when it's all said and done. Kevin Pedersen has a good question here, Tony, and I think we'll put a bookmark in the Teuvo and Mikheyev discussion for 2 seconds, because you're the goalie guy, so I want to hear from you on this. Kevin Patterson says here, think we should draft another goalie this year. Guyon has not started very well in NCAA. What do you think, Tony, that the Blackhawks should do? Do you think it's worth drafting another goaltender to plump up the pipeline, or do you think there's other areas that they need to add more depth in before worrying about goalie?
This is sort of a double-edged sword here, Ron, and my thought process is it really depends on what your timeline is. And I've had this discussion with you numerous times on this show. What year are you looking to compete? You can draft another goalie this year. Obviously, I think Guyon was 2023, right? So, I mean, that's sort of aggressive, I would think, Ron, in my opinion. Still, maybe give it another year. Depends. I haven't looked at this draft class in terms of goalies yet, but it just sort of depends on where you want these guys in their timeline. If you're banking on a goalie to be up and be that guy. We've had this discussion so far this season on Arvid Soderblom. Like, is he going to be serviceable? You haven't really seen them go out and invest the resources in the offensive side yet. So I think you're still a little bit of ways away in a master plan scenario to have your number one goalie here right now, unless it's someone that you're already currently trying to develop. I don't think it's bad to throw another name in the mix, but you do have Commesso in the pipeline. You've got Arvid Soderblom here in the pipeline. You've got Guyon in the pipeline. That's 3 names already. Do you want to add a 4th? I mean, it just really depends on where you want to allocate those resources. But you know me, Ron, at the end of the day, am I going to get excited because they drafted a goalie? Yeah, I am. So we'll see what happens. We'll see. But if you're not sold on any 3 of those names, I think it's sort of a position right now, Ron, where if you're not sold on any 3 of the guys that are here, and none of them make even Soderblom still has strides to make. Comesso's got major strides to make. Guyon hasn't even gotten to the point where we can evaluate it. I think you need to go outside of the organization if you're intent on competing in the next 2 years and probably find yourself a finished product. We don't even know what Brossoit is going to look like either, too. That could be a guy that when he starts is completely solid here, and you're talking potential extension or what have you. So just because he hasn't played yet for the Blackhawks doesn't mean that he's not going to win over the fans in the front office either. So I think that there's so much at play there that I can't really, say that it's a good idea or a bad idea at this point. we're about on the other side of the calendar for draft season right now. So it'll be interesting to see what shakes out. And I think the other portion of that is, do you lose a piece in that goaltender room at the trade deadline coming up here, or via waivers, or
Sure.
anything else too? So I think that there's a lot up in the air in the goalie stuff. We can flip back over. Thank you, Kevin, for the comment in there. I will talk goalie stuff all day. But Ron, you were going on about how good Teuvo Teravainen is right now, and I want to keep hearing good things.
Of course, and I'm going to tell you some more good things really quick, though, just to round out this drafting goalie situation here. The Blackhawks have 8 draft picks in the upcoming draft. They have 4 picks in the first 2 rounds. They have 2 4s and then a 6 and a 7. So no picks in the 5th or 3rd rounds of this year's upcoming draft. Very good pick value based on Puckpedia's draft pick values. It's their Perry draft pick value model. Very exciting. I mean, in terms of the opportunity, you certainly could argue that the Hawks maybe take a goalie with one of those 2 4th rounders. I think that's a place where they can still load up at forward, still load up on the blue line, and still get a guy who's a long-term project. I think because, I know still it says it here, Cabessa needing to work on the rebound control, not ready for the level yet. Absolutely. There's a reason that he's starting as much as he is in Rockford. They really need, again, Laurent Brossoit could come up and play really well, and that addresses your goaltending situation for at least a while. Goalie's a weird position, right? Goalie to me is like relief pitchers in baseball. It's a volatile position. Only the true elites are really good year in and year out. A lot of times, though, most guys have a lot of up and down seasons. Peter Mrazek is the definition of that in his NHL career. He's had years where he was probably all-star worthy caliber goaltender, and then he's had other years where he was probably one of the worst in the league. And one of those just happened to be in one of the seasons in Chicago. They also still have both guys, that being Mrazek and Brossoit, under contract for next season too. So I don't think they have to take a goalie. They certainly can, especially if he's a long-term project. But to me, that's where it would come from, because of you already have Soderblom, who's working at the NHL level. You already have Cabessa working in the AHL. You have Guyon, who's working in college hockey, which is great. You want all those guys to develop on their own timeline. Maybe you get a guy that's a juniors bound goaltender. Maybe he goes back to the W or the O or something like that for 2 to 3 years. And then you see him in Rockford, when you probably have a good idea of what you have in guys like Drew Cabessa and at least Arvid Soderblom. Maybe not so much yet Adam Guyon. So that's just my 2 cents to add in there on the goalie front. But Tony, agree with you. Good things. Teuvo Teravainen, good things. Ilya Mikheyev, good things. Connor Bedard, good things. No, people are thinking, wow, Connor Bedard's having a shit season. No, he's not. He's got 30 points in 36 games. That's not a bad season. Not for a 19-year-old.
Luke Richardson ruined him, though, according to the masses.
According to the masses, but it's. I think he'll be just fine. I think he will be just fine.
That's got to be my favorite storyline out of this season so far.
So dumb. It just shows people don't understand that hockey is a sport of patience. Absolute patience. And it's going to be very intriguing, to see how the fan base adjusts to that, of understanding that, like, sometimes you got to be patient with young guys. Not every guy is Connor McDavid, and even Connor McDavid struggled in his first year in the league, and he also got hurt. And then he came back, and then he started becoming Connor McDavid. Some guys don't become superstars immediately. And you could still make the argument, Connor Bedard's got 87 points in his first 100 games in the NHL. Like, that's still pretty fucking good, if you ask me. So that's neither here nor there. But again,
he is on the good thing list, though. He's on the good.
He is.
We're a little bit behind Christmas, but I think he wound up on Santa's nice list when it came to his statistics.
I agree wholeheartedly. Not a ton of goals. He had that really nice goal against Minnesota, but still being a playmaker, still setting things up for other guys on the roster. And it's going to be, good to see. Still agrees this Bedard is an unselfish player, which is great, but on a team that struggles to score goals, he needs to shoot more. I agree. And Tony, I think this is why I had a great conversation with somebody in early December about this. To me, the best way for Connor Bedard to maximize his potential going forward is to treat him as the Alex Ovechkin player, or treat him as the Artemi Panarin player. What I mean by that is, Let him be the shooter. Don't make him be the playmaker. To me, that's the one thing that the Hawks need to get. I think they tried to do that. We heard about the reports of, Kyle Davidson dangling his first round pick unprotected this season, which it looks like it's going to probably be a lottery pick again. Unprotected to the Columbus Blue Jackets to try and get back up to number 4 and take Ivan Demidov in this most recent draft. Demidov projects as a guy who has really good setup skills.
Okay, so Davidson needs to go out and get that guy.
And I think he tried to, and I think he knows that that's what they need.
You love to throw this one. You love to throw this one out there, especially to me and Johnny, because we wanted Demidov.
Demidov,
yeah. You love to throw this one out there.
Yeah, so you got to every once in a while.
My thought process here is, okay, well, if you want to leak that out to the media that you really wanted to go out here and get yourself another offensive type caliber player like a Demidov, go out and make that happen at some point this offseason. I'm not asking for it now, but do something maybe a little bit more aggressive. One comment came in at Fake Ball Coach, might have missed it. I don't think it's a coincidence that Seth Jones came back and the Hawks struggled again defensively. You did miss it. I started the show off with that, so go back and check out the podcast version when it becomes available. You can tune it in. Fake Ball Coach Kevin is back in as well. Some fans will freak out if they decide to send Nazar down. I think our last episode sort of covered that, Ron. You gave a good serenade towards that. Thank you for all the comments that keep coming in here. Let's keep them going, guys. Ron,
especially on a Sunday afternoon when there is football on it, it's certainly appreciated.
Great
to have people joining us here on a Sunday afternoon. But Tony, let's keep things rolling, because I think you and I are both very excited to talk about what's to come, right, with the Chicago Blackhawks and the schedule and things like that. So let's get into some roster notes. We'll get into a couple other little segments here, and we'll focus a little bit more on the outlook of the show, and then obviously, of course, we'll finish up with our normal segments as we always do. But right now, so like I said, I think the takeaways from this was the hot streaks from Mikheyev and Teravainen, the bad play that we've seen, and what the reasoning for that is, and that's all things that we've covered here. It's going to be interesting. The title of this episode is Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde Blackhawks, because they win 3 in a row and then they lost 3 in a row. Are they going to snap that 3-game losing streak tonight against Dallas? We certainly hope so. We'll be in the building for that. If they don't, that's a 4-game losing streak you're riding into the Winter Classic. And that's a game that's probably going to be very easy to get up for because of the nature. There's reported potential snow in the forecast during the game as well. It could end up being one of those picturesque, just cinema-like moments of a sporting event at Wrigley Field on Tuesday afternoon. So much incredible stuff to come. Again, couple roster notes. Still no Alec Martinez. Craig Smith was also put on the IR. Since our last show, we noted that he had missed some games on our last show. They were both skating today it was an optional skate today. Both were skating, as were a lot of the young players on the roster and a few of the veterans. So good to see Martinez hopefully returning here soon, as well as Craig Smith, who I think it's crazy to say that his presence is a little bit missed in the bottom 6. In addition to that,
I would agree with that.
In addition to that, we mentioned Brissois in his timeline. We're probably looking at mid to late January right now for his return. And then obviously the big nose that we talked a lot about a little bit earlier in the show, Kevin Korchinski, sent down to Rockford to go back to playing his habitual 20-plus minutes a game. Kaiser comes up, had a really nice 4-game stretch with the Ice Hogs, was a +6 and had an assist. So really good outlook from Wyatt Kaiser, and he's been playing some good hockey. So really hoping to see him draw in probably here in the near future. Tony, I have one fun thing here that it's been drawing a lot of attention recently on the Blackhawks socials, and that is former 2nd-round pick, number 44 overall, Roman Kanserov in the KHL, is playing really good hockey as a 20-year-old. It's getting a lot of people excited. Right now, he's actually statistically on the best point per game pace for a player as a 20-year-old in the KHL ever. And that's on a list with guys like Kirill Kaprizov, with Artemi Panarin, with a lot of really good players that have come over from Russia and become stars in the NHL. Kanserov was a guy that a lot of people said, hey, he's a huge talent, but you're going to have to wait a few years for him because he had just re-signed with his KHL team. But he is able to come over effectively as a 22-year-old when it's all said and done for the 2026-27 season. He has been on fire. And Tone, I'm gonna pull up these numbers here real quick and share them with the masses. This was as of a few days ago, so these numbers absolutely could have changed a smidge. This was before Christmas. In 18 games so far this season, at the time, Roman Kanserov had 17 points, 9 goals, and 8 assists. That's really freaking good. For people that don't know, it's hard to be a point-per-game player in the KHL. Players that finished on this list as 20-year-olds for a KHL season in terms of points per game, the lowest number here is a 0.638 points per game. Pavel Buchnevich, who NHLer, Artemi Panarin, NHLer, Kirill Marchenko, NHLer, Evgeny Kuznetsov, obviously was a longtime NHLer, Kirill Kaprizov, current NHLer, and Vladimir Tarasenko, who currently holds the record as a 20-year-old in the KHL. Roman Kanserov's having a really good season. And as a guy who I don't think we should get over the moon about, like, do you remember who was it that Scott Powers absolutely loves? Maxim, was it Shelanov or something like that? Who he was just all about, who was gonna come. I don't think he's not gonna come to the NHL. I do think he will. But man, is he putting up some incredible numbers right now in the KHL. And I think it's worth at least just if you're down on the outlook of offensive production for the future of this team, the two players I would encourage people to look at in terms of prospects to follow and have some level of optimism about are Nick Lardis and Roman Kanserov. Because I think those two guys, both from the same draft class, have an opportunity to come up and be some really nice probably that top 6 to top 9 type scores at the NHL level, which is only going to help guys like Frank Nazar and Connor Bedard and so on and so forth for who will be here in the future.
That's been Ron's Prospect Minute. We need a sponsor for that segment. I have not watched any of his play on the ice, Ron, so I'm going to need you to send me some video clips and some highlights that we can check out here soon. But I think that brings us almost to our regularly scheduled segments. I don't have any feathers to ruffle, Ron. I don't know about you. I don't feel like ruffling any feathers. It's supposed to be a happy time of year.
It is supposed to be a happy time of year. I don't really have too many feathers to ruffle. Maybe Stuart Breezing wants to ruffle a feather here with his comment, though. He says Hawks added more veterans to this roster before the season, but Foligno was the only one who tried to energize the team against the Sabres. Worst game in recent memory, and you have one guy. Yeah, I think that's worth ruffling feathers. Hopefully that's something that the Hawks take into account tonight against the Stars. And obviously over this next, especially, again, 5 games coming up, all at home. The Rangers are mixed into that. As are the Colorado Avalanche. Obviously, we'll see the Montreal Canadiens and, of course, the St. Louis Blues as a part of the Winter Classic. Fake Ball Coach wants to know, Tony, though, why has Savoie not been called up yet? Energy alone is game-changing. And he has had a really nice run in Rockford. I don't know if you've seen any of the highlights, Tony, but, I mean, he is the epitome of the guy who's going to get you a Gordie Howe hat trick on a night-to-night basis. Like, he'll drop the gloves and then go put up a goal and an assist. He is not really, I mean, from like an offensive output spot, he's putting up respectable numbers this season. Nothing to necessarily write home about. He is also technically a rookie by AHL standards, so these numbers can certainly improve over the course of the year and then into next season. But 29 games played for him. He has 8 points, 3 goals, 5 assists. But I mean, he is kind of that energy player that, you know, maybe it's not this year, but I do think there's a chance, especially if he gets hot and is continuing to bring that energy, could be a guy that the Hawks give a cup of coffee to before the year's over.
I think that they're just waiting at this point in time for that reason. See what they can clear out in terms of space on this roster. Probably closer to the trade deadline. Some veteran names are going to move, especially with the way this thing is headed. So I don't know if it's exactly time yet to bring some of these guys up. I know you had the Frank Nazar call up, and that was at an interesting time with the coaching change. And then you had Kevin Korchinski obviously make his way up here, as well as Drew Commesso from that next wave. But I I just don't think it's the right time yet. You'll see a youth movement towards the end of the season, is my prediction.
Definitely. And just even looking at the team roster right now, Tone, you've got Taylor Hall, who's an impending free agent. He can certainly be moved by the deadline. He does have, I believe it's a modified no trade clause, but yeah, it's a 10-team no trade list. So certainly could still move him to a contender at the deadline. Ilya Mikheyev has some no trade protection, but certainly a guy that could okay a trade. He's got 2 years left in this one and then next year. Ryan Donato's an impending free agent. Philip Kurashev, an impending free agent. I think an interesting name that we have to keep an eye on the rest of the year. In addition to that, Pat Maroon, obviously, Craig Smith, obviously, both also impending free agents. So definitely agree with you, Tony. I think there's definitely a couple of opportunities that will open once the trade deadline comes and goes, and if the Blackhawks make a couple of moves to further, allow some of these guys to move on and go be a, go actually have a chance to win some games and maybe have a chance at a cup for some of these veterans on the team. But I agree with you, Tone. Transitioning back to kind of our show here. I don't have any feathers to ruffle, but I think Stola Breezing does, because he gave us 2 comments about this player. That TJ Brody says, what does Brody have to do or not have to do to be a healthy scratch? Because he asked earlier, why is TJ Brody being promoted to the top D pairing? Is Anders on the edibles? Is he on the edibles, Tony?
They gave him a bunch of money to come here and play. Like, every team's going to need the fall guy, and Brody is he's not good, but he's become the and you like to call him Pylon Ruda, and I think everybody is piling on TJ Brody right now. They gave him that contract. There's a reason he's playing. We probably don't know what that reason is. We're not going to be able to justify it, but he's in the lineup. We're going to watch TJ Brody play every day, and you're going to like it.
I think
the Blackhawks are telling us right now.
I think the only opportunity there is for TJ Brody to be a healthy scratch for a game is one of 2 things. One, Wyatt Kaiser plays really well. Obviously, we're not going to see him on Sunday, but
it doesn't seem like games, that's Ron. It doesn't even seem like that's the case, though.
Well, sure, but also Alec Martinez is also hurt, so it's kind of also at the opportunity right now. What else are you going to do besides trot out TJ Brody every night? You know what you get out of him, right? Like there's no secrets with TJ Brody. It's what he is as a player. He's making $2 million a year. He's here for 2 seasons, this one and next. He's keeping spaces warm for the likes of Artem Levshinov and Kevin Korchinski in the next 2 years. And I think Sorensen's just trying to kind of throw shit at the wall and see what sticks. And, giving kind of a different look to that top pairing seems to be one of the reasons that he wants to do that tonight. Tony, do you have any stick taps for us?
No, I don't have a stick tap today, Ron. Outside of, I've given this stick tap a couple of times, but Arvid Soderblom's played really well. I guess you could give it to him for coming in and somewhat stopping the bleeding against the Sabres, but I feel like there's the recent stretch of games has left me with no stick taps. Had we had the opportunity to do a show after that 3-game winning streak, I probably could have given out about 5 or 10 of these, but I hope they stop the bleeding tonight and this little losing streak, so I could feel more positive. Because I was getting kind of high on the Hawks for a minute and came right back down to earth.
I feel that. I do have 2 stick taps to give out, and that is to the recent play of Teuvo Teravainen and Ilya Mikheyev, which we touched on already in the show. A really hot stretch. They were a big reason the Blackhawks had that 3-game winning streak because of their offensive output. 2 guys that I would like to see continuing to put numbers on the board. Teuvo, from the he is a top 6 winger on this team, and he's here for 3 seasons. He's one of the few guys under contract beyond Connor Bedard's contract expiration. He's gonna be here. He's a guy that they need to put up points. So good to see that. And Mikheyev, I think Mikheyev is an interesting player that a lot of people don't give enough credit to. He's got some scoring prowess. He's got that kind of motor that this team likes. I'm hoping he continues to do what he's doing. He had some really good seasons in Toronto, was doing some decent things for the Vancouver Canucks. They just couldn't justify his money anymore. And it's a trade that worked out for Kyle Davidson, getting some more assets and getting yourself a player who recently was a part of your best stretch of hockey since literally Luke Richardson's first season, and Patrick Kane was still a Blackhawk. So I think that's, incredibly important for those two to continue to put up those kind of numbers. And because of that, I think it warrants a couple of stick taps for each of them. But those are the only stick taps that I have to give out for now, Tony, neither one of us were right on our predictions. Obviously, we've had a few games since then. You said 1-2 in that stretch. I also said 1-2 against the Devils, Islanders, and Capitals. They went 2-1 in that stretch because that was the start of that 3-game win streak there. We're gonna preview the 3 games coming up. We may or may not be back right after the Winter Classic with a show, but we want to at least get ahead of that Canadiens game just in case. Why we say? Well, because Tony and I are probably going to be at all 3 of these games this week. So there's going to be a ton of live content coming from the Four Feathers podcast, from our accounts individually. So be on the lookout for that. I am at Loose on Tap. He's Tony on Tap on the socials. And of course, at Four Feathers Pod is where you can find us. Be on the lookout. Videos. Be on the lookout for pictures, all the good stuff, maybe even a couple of interviews if we get lucky here, especially for the Winter Classic and getting down there nice and early to talk to the Hawks faithful as everybody gets ready for the game in Wrigleyville. So Sunday, it is against Dallas tonight. This is on ESPN. So for those that are watching along with us live, or if you're tuning in on your way to the UC, or you're just tuning in late this afternoon, this is an ESPN game. So you should be able to watch it as long as you have ESPN. In addition to that, Tuesday, as we noted, is the Winter Classic. That's a 4:00 Central Time start. That will be on TNT. So again, another national game. And then it is back to CHSN on Friday against Montreal. That's a 7:00 puck drop at the United Center. Tony, prediction for these 3 games coming up. What's the Blackhawks record? 2-1. Okay. 2-1. Okay. I like it. Tony, it's the holiday season. And I did not get coal in my stocking this year for Christmas. So I'm feeling good.
You bring out the 3-0?
I might sound really stupid when it's all said and done. But fuck it. Why not? I think the Blackhawks win all 3 of these games this week because we're going to be there. That's why they win all 3.
I know. That's why I wanted to go 3-0, and then all right, you stole it. But fine, I'm going to stick with my 2-1. I think that there might be a game that they drop. We're historically not good at outdoor games, so
that is true. That is very true. Tone, you are still in the lead. I will note that here for everybody that is curious. From at home, you are our leader still. You have 3 correct. You and Johnny tied at the top. I'm still sitting there with 2. So that's why we got to get a little bold. I got to try and catch up to the rest of you guys and hopefully, improve my records prediction. But we're going to go optimistic with it. We're going to say 3-0 for the upcoming stretch. Started 3 games in a row in person, Tony. Very, very excited personally. I know you are as well. That all starts here on Sunday. Actually, I think you and I will both be leaving in the next hour and a half to venture down to the United Center. So again, follow along with the Four Feathers podcast. There's going to be a lot of on-site entertainment from the Four Feathers group. We will be at the United Center this evening. We'll be at Wrigley Field on Tuesday, and then we'll be back at the United Center on Friday evening. So it should be a great time. Stolet wants to know, do the Hawks lay another egg on national television? I say no. Again, 3-0. I'm going to ride it until I'm wrong. And I might be wrong after today, which is totally okay. But we got to inject some good energy into the atmosphere. As always, again, reminding everybody, Four Feathers Pod on the socials. Be sure to check us out. Like, subscribe, hit the bell button on YouTube at OnTap Sportsnet. We appreciate all of your comments. We appreciate the likes because that just only helps us. So you want to help us, that's a great way to do it. And we certainly appreciate every single one of you tuning in. As always, be sure as well to rate us wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. If you like us a lot, give us a 5-star rating or tell us what we can do better. And we will continue to improve here what the product is that you are listening to at the Four Feathers Podcast. I have nothing else to say, Tony. I appreciate everybody. I hope everybody had a great Christmas, and we wish everybody a happy new year, because we will not be on the microphones again until 2025. The 3 Blackhawks games in person for myself and Tony this week. Lots of Four Feathers content coming up. So please, if you're not already, follow along at Four Feathers Pod on the socials, and we're going to have a damn good time taking in some Blackhawks holiday season hockey from both the United Center and from one of my favorite places on earth, Wrigley Field. Tony, that's all I've got. You have anything else for us?
Nothing, man. Just let's
All
go
right.
Hawks.
Let's go Hawks, baby.